Hey guys, it is Tristan with Nerdette's Newsstand, and we are going to talk today a little bit about X-Men. Now, I talked in a previous video about Disney Day. We talked about the different trailers and the little teasers and announcements that they dropped. But what I wanted to specifically talk about was X-Men 97. Now, if you are new to the channel, you may not know this, but I grew up with this. X-Men, to me, the animated series, and Batman, the animated series, are everything I loved in my childhood. I would pretend I was Rogue, put on the Southern accent and all, and I was in love. I loved the idea, weirdly enough, of not being able to touch people. Yeah, that's probably more for a therapist. Yeah, probably. But let's talk about this announcement because it has mildly caused some controversy. Now, it does look like a lot of the original team is coming back, and there are some odd videos. Yeah, we'll call them odd videos going around about not liking and canceling one of the showrunners or one of the people that work on this because they supported Black Lives Matter and a few other silly things like that. You know, typical cancel culture stuff. And then, of course, the elephant in the room is that, oh my God, it's going to be woke. So let's dive into a little bit of what X-Men was and X-Men is and X-Men has been since Chris Claremont made it a viable IP when the 80s happened and he did stuff like God Loves, Man Kills. If you have not read that story, you are absolutely missing out. It is one of the best stories in X-Men history, if not the best story in X-Men history. But we're specifically going to talk about the cartoon. Now we're going to see a return of the nostalgia, right? A lot of this is nostalgia bait. This is something that is done time and time again by companies like Disney or Fox or Warner Brothers, any of them. So we're going to get the return of Wolverine and Cyclops and Jubilee, who was absolutely not my favorite character on that show. No, I didn't even realize she was only supposed to be like 13. Okay, all right. Also, Jean Grey, Rogue, Gambit. Rogue and Gambit were always my favorite. Just always my favorite. So, with this all coming to a head, it has brought them back into the light the idea that, this property coming back might be woke. Before we even address that, I am not saying that this could not be bad because of creative decisions. But if your argument is that it's going to be woke, go back and look at the original series. There was a lot of huge elements to this that maybe you didn't notice as a kid. We recently talked about this with the Static show. A lot of people were saying Static is getting political when it's always been extremely political with gun violence and bigotry and racism. A lot of those elements were in there and you didn't notice as a child. So let's talk about some of the elements that were in the X-Men animated series. Prejudice, divorce, intolerance, bigotry, being isolated, straight up racism, religious zealotry, the Holocaust. What about the Holocaust? The AIDS hysteria, being lonely, political corruption, police corruption, authority corruption, not to mention sexual orientation and gender identity, and polyamory. I don't know what you were watching, but we may have been watching something different. But the X-Men were always, by this weird definition, woke. The X-Men were always not only woke, but they were more woke than anything at that time. You had polyamory in a three-way relationship between Wolverine, Cyclops, and Jean Grey. In a kid's show. Yes. And it didn't bother anybody. Nobody complained because it was entertaining and because you were able to love the characters, what they go through, how they go through it, and how they come out the other side. And I really still, to this day, think this show holds up for not only people my age, but for kids, for people just wanting to watch it. But a lot of what came from the X-Men, and I am not talking pre-Chris Claremont because they were not successful. They just weren't. They weren't viable then when they were written by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and in that era. They were very low selling and eventually canceled and brought back, and they did very well. Now, there is a grave misunderstanding that they are based off of MLK originally and Malcolm X, and that is not necessarily true. But when Chris Claremont did his runs on it, a lot of it was on bigotry and stuff, but no, they weren't specifically based on those two characters. But if you look at somebody like Professor X, he is a classic left-leaning liberal. Absolutely. In his values, believes in the system and believes, the system can be reformed. They can have mutant equality. But if you look at Magneto, he's a classic revolutionary. He wants to burn it all down and bring it back. Now, again, I am talking about the show more. Of course, the comics are very similar, but you have stuff discussed in these shows like the Mutant Registration Act, equality for mutants. These characters were not hated for something that they could change, something, that they had a terrible personality, nothing. They were hated for the idea that they were simply mutants. And that's where you see the draws with bigotry, right? Whether it's religious bigotry or something systemic, right? Talking, and they've addressed stuff in the comics about, big, or when it came to Beast, I don't remember what storyline it was. He was afraid he wouldn't get a fair trial and he would have longer sentencing times if he was convicted of the crime because he was mutant. That all goes back to the allegory of Black people getting longer prison times, the harsher sentences, right? So it's all from direct violence, which we see quite often, obviously, to systemic violence, such as the court system, how court systems treat people, mutants in this case. But it is obviously an allegory for an other. Now, I appreciate X-Men a lot because you don't have to be an oppressed minority to feel like an outsider. You don't. That is not how life works. You can feel like an outsider at any given point in your life. It's just the occurrence is less frequent, right? You can feel like that person. Just being somebody that, in this day or in that day and age that read comics, you would feel like that outsider. You would feel like that othered person. And that's a lot of what this stood for. It wasn't just civil rights, though it was definitely an allegory for it at points. And it wasn't just, LGBT rights. It was for everyone, but you could still see those allegories. So if you're worried that it's going to be woke, I have a little bit of news for you. It's always been just beyond woke in the best storytelling possible. X-Men and Captain America, a couple more of the Marvel titles, and have always been extremely political. A lot of the storytelling we do in a lot of the movies of our time are simply a representation of what is going on in society. And this was no different in that era of Chris Claremont. Whether, a lot of it, in God Kills, Man Love, or God Loves, Man Kills, you see this, televangelist type, basically going against everything that is mutants. And it's a fun, deep dive if you go into it. And what do we have now? A crazy televangelist going against anybody that disagrees with them. You can't make this shit up. You can't make it up. Well, you can if you're Chris Claremont. But anyways, I wanted to talk about the X-Men a little bit. I am excited for this to return. I am excited to see what they're able to do with it, how they're able to construct what we see in society today, how they're able to flip it and make it an allegory, not only for an oppressed minority, not only for an oppressed somebody from the LGBTQ crowd. I want to see them be able to do that, but also be able to put it in there and make it for everyone. It's funny because if you go back and look at the history of the original show, last 2 years, we've had a lot in the news about people getting fired or stepping down from their jobs because they were voicing a black person. And you look at stuff like Family Guy with Cleveland. That, that they kind of set the standard with X-Men. That's, the first Storm actress was actually dismissed because she was white. Yeah, but this show's not woke. Okay. All right. Regardless of if it is or not, I'm going to be excited to watch it. Let me know if you guys are too. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.